Look how big this hat makes my head look. Woo! Hey, what's up? I'm Allie and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be going over my 2021 reading stats and comparing those to 2020 and 2019. These are always some of my favorite videos to watch because I am just such a slut for statistics. Oh, I love it, and I love a good spreadsheet. For anyone who doesn't know, I put out a massive, extensive reading spreadsheet, and I will have a link down below to the video where you can download the one that I use that tracks all this stuff. I just want to preface this by saying I did a really shitty job tracking things this past year. I stopped updating my Goodreads in April or something, and I just wasn't pulling open my spreadsheet. I was in a bit of a reading slump. My stats this year are a little weird for a multitude of reasons. So this year is going to be a weird one to look back on, I feel, when I continue to do this video, because it's just a weird one. I'm not even gonna lie, it's a bit of a weird one. I do not have any author information, publication dates. I don't really have anything like that kind of filled out. I also realized halfway through the year that the way that I was tracking where I acquired the books and also things like that were a little different than how I actually want to track them in the future. So it was kind of a weird experimental year, I feel, for me with the tracking system. So lessons learned. A little background of why this year my statistics are going to be a little weird. One, I was in a massive reading slump, so I feel like the trend of which I read things was all over the place. It's not anything like I normally expect it to. I normally have months that I know that I read a lot, and then months that I know that I don't, and that just really wasn't the case. This past year I was in a reading slump for pretty much the whole year. And also the other thing that really is fucking with everything is my freaking Goosebumps. I read 60 of the 62 Goosebumps. I think it was that. Of the 62 Goosebumps this past year. I did a video in September where I read them all. Gavin also did this video. We did it together. And so that ended up messing up pretty much all of my stats. They're all skewed towards the Goosebumps series. So I will be including them in here, but I will make a note when we get to certain things of how I think not having those would look, because obviously they aren't really necessarily something that I probably would have picked up in one go, but we do it for the tube. Let's get into my stats. I'm probably gonna have some graphics and some graphs and all kinds of stuff. First, I'm gonna go through my 2021 monthly stats. And these are going to be kind of a physical representation of what I read and how that looked, and then we'll look at everything in review compared to previous years. So specifically 2021 information. In January, I was really starting the year strong with a total of 3 books with 368 pages and 22 and a half hours audio. You will see the audio becomes my life. You will see. In February, I read a total of 7 things with 354 pages and 30 hours of audiobook time. In March, I read 4 things, 1,391 pages, and 21 hours. Now that was all those pages read were because a Court of whatever came out. In April, I read a whopping 2 things. And I didn't physically read any pages, but I did listen to 28 hours of audio. In May, I read 7 things, 702 pages, and 32 hours audio. In June, I'll go to a whopping 1 thing. Again, did not physically read any pages, but I did listen to 12 and a half hours with that 1 thing. July, I read 8 things with 1,145 pages and 36 hours in audio. August, 7 things with 705 pages and 41 and a half hours audio. September, September was Goosebumps month. I read 60 things. I still think I must be missing something because I'm pretty sure I only missed 2 Goosebumps and I read a different book. So I'm not too sure. I don't feel like double checking all the Goosebumps titles. But with 570 pages and 117 hours audio. Now this was estimated because I was listening to not official audio books for this. That might be illegal. But I was basically, I own all the books, so I don't feel like sleazy about this, but I did listen to basically other people reading the book because I just didn't have time to sit down and physically read them. So that was, I kind of rounded everything to about 3 hours each, so there's that. In October, I read a total of 18 things with 2,001 pages and 52 and a half hours audio. In November, we got a 0, 0, 0 across the board. I did nothing in November. I was supposed to participate in NaNoWriMo, which I kind of did, but not really. In December, I read 6 things with 912 pages and 30 and a half hours audio. All of that collectively at the end of the year means that I read 123 things. Oh, what a satisfying number, by the way. I stopped. I was going to finish one more book for the year, and I was like, oh, but that's such a lovely number. I want to leave it. And with that, I read 8,148 pages, and I had 483 and a half hours in audiobook listening, which is insane, I feel. Maybe? I don't know. I created a few other infographics just to kind of showcase some things I didn't really go over. Like, here are all the owned books that I read this year and the star ratings that I gave them. I also put every book that I read besides all the Goosebumps books into their star rating category so you can see where everything goes. And as usual, I give pretty much the majority of my reading a 4 or a 4.5 stars, which is pretty standard for me. I like to enjoy things. Kind of the stats for January in the past years. In January 21, I read 3 things. In January 20, I read 8. And in 19, I read 12. In a steady decrease in my New Year's motivation. February in 21, I read 7 things. In 20, I read 7 things. And in 19, I read 4. In March, 4 things. In 20, 11, and in 19, 10. In April, I read 2 things. Normally in the past, this seems to be kind of a trend. In 20, it was a little weird because it was 10, but in 2019, it was also 2 things. So that's interesting. Apparently, April is not a good reading month for me. In May, 7. In 2020, it was also 7. In 2019, it was 13. I do remember 2019. I got like this burst, like every other month. So 2019 is like all over the place. In June, I read 1 thing last year. The previous year was 5, and the year before that it was 6. This is a pretty busy month for me. I always know that this is a busy month for me, so that tends to be a lower month than I expect it to be. Now, July tends to be my best reading month, and this year I felt was a little weird. This past year, I read 8 things. In previous years, I read 11 and 14 things. Now, August is pretty steady. Last year I read 7, the year before that 9, and the year before that 9. So that's pretty steady. Now, September obviously is a weird one here because I read 60 things this previous year. But the year before that I read 5 and 8, and I would think 5 and 8 is probably, more roundabout what I would normally read. I don't normally read the whole Goosebumps series. October is also one of my more highly read months because all the Halloween stuff is happening and I want to read all the things in October. So this previous year was 18, the year before that was 11, and the year before that was 15. And I think that that is pretty standard. Now, November, I know, is pretty much always my lowest month because of Nano. I tend to spend all my time writing instead of reading. So previous years it was 3 and 7. Now I'm surprised it was 7 one year, but I don't think I actually won Nano that year, so that might make more sense. And then December, normally I tend to think is a pretty high reading month for me, but looking here, I guess not. I don't know why I always thought it was like a really successful reading month for me, but we had 6 last year, the year before that 8, and the year before that 17, which I'm thinking is where I'm getting that from. Is why I think that December is normally a very successful reading month for me. At the year at a glance, this I felt like was fascinating. So in 2021, I read 123 things with 8,148 pages and 483 and a half hours in audio. What is interesting is in 2020, I only read 95 things. That's a pretty big decrease, like 30 things decrease there, with more pages, so 9,958, like significantly more pages. And then less time audio, so 472. So that means that I was spending just about equal amount of time with reading in 21 as I was 20, but I read more things in 21. So I'm thinking that they were probably a lot more shorter things than in 2020, but it's just interesting that these times were pretty equal. Like if you take away the amount of pages and equal it out with less time audio, it's about the same. And then in 2019, I read 117 things with 20,000 pages. 20,000 pages, 557, and then 360 hours audio. So I was reading a lot more physical things that year. I mean, significant decrease there. Just goes to show audiobooks run my life now. I don't know how anyone reads anymore without them. I really don't. Okay, looking at the genres, my genres are pretty much the same every year. It's fantasy dominates and then graphic novels. Those I feel like are what my channel is known for, so that's not surprising. The subgenre is normally like romance as well. So like that's not really surprising except for the gradual increase of horror, because I do feel like my channel, well, I say my channel, but me as a person really got into horror in this past year. Now Goosebumps is considered horror, so it looks like it's a shit ton more this year because it's showing on my graph that it was like 60% or something crazy was horror, which is just not true. It dominated, but actually, if you take away all the Goosebumps books, it is pretty much equal with fantasy and graphic novel. So all three of them were pretty close, pretty equal this past year. Now, in 2020, I only had 6% horror. That's when I like dabbled a little, but not really. And then 2019, no horror. There was none at all. So this has been like a gradual thing that I've gotten into, but it's interesting because fantasy and graphic novel are like slowly going down and horror is quickly matching them. So do I know my reading taste anymore? I don't know. Look at format because I find this fascinating because I read from a variety of formats. Now this is hard for me to track because honestly, when it comes to physical and ebooks, sometimes I switch between the two. So it's really hard to figure out which I want to track. I normally end up just choosing the one that I read from the most, but oftentimes if I'm going to bed and I want to keep reading, but Brian is trying to sleep, I will find an e-copy of it somewhere and read it that way in bed. So very often I use both of them. So I feel like this isn't going to be 100% accurate to my total type of reading, but for the most part, like the main way of which I read things is here. Yeah. So in 2021, I had 21% physical, 75% audio, not surprised, and 4% ebook. In 2020, I had 28% physical, 59% audio, and 12% ebook. So you can see over the years that I've had a gradual decrease in physical and gradual increase in audio, but it's been like, it's gradual, but I feel like it's also rapid kind of deal. Like very quickly dominating. And then in 2019, I had 42% physical, 33% audio, and then 25% ebook. So that was the one time where audio was less than physical, and then it just took over my life after that. And then the last thing that I really track here is the intended audience, because I always think this is fascinating that I will see my channel being recommended places as a YA specific channel. People are like, Hardback Hoarder is specifically YA recommendations, which is very interesting to me because over the years I have found that I feel like I don't read a lot of YA compared to other people. So the fact that I'm always getting recommended as a YA recommender is interesting because in all my years, I've never had the majority YA. So in 2019, it was 40% adult and 39% YA. This is the closest that they were. And then 21% middle grade. In 2020, we jumped to 52% adult, 36 YA, and 10% middle grade. And then new adult became a more prominent genre that I knew about. So we had 2% new adult. In 2021, we had 31% adult. We had 16% YA, 50% middle grade. Thanks, Goosebumps. And 5% new adult. So more realistically, I would think here that you're going to have, adult was much more than YA. The middle grade messed it up, but realistically, the adult was still much higher than YA. So it's always interesting to me that people are like, that's a YA reviewer. Sometimes, only about 16% of the time. Oh my gosh, these are just so fun. They're just so fun. I can't wait to watch everyone's. Feel free to let me know if you have created a video about your reading statistics. I would love to know, but thank you all so much for joining me. I cannot wait to see how 2022 turns out and how this is going to look. I like collecting the years as we go along now to see, and hopefully I'll have some more author information next year because I do think that is important. I tend to be someone who doesn't pay attention to authors, and I should because they work so hard to give us the things, the worlds, and the characters that we love. So hope you have liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see future videos from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!